An update in the district. Black Lives Matter Plaza is officially a memory. Yesterday, crews removed the landmark yellow letters from 16th Street. The plaza was dedicated in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. It came under fire from the Trump administration earlier this month. Now, within days, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser announced plans to redo it. Moving forward, she wants local artists and student artwork displayed there.
Yeah, good luck with that. Not if President Trump has anything to say about it. Gang, this is what the Black Lives Matter Plaza looks like as of today. It's gone. I mean, gone. I mean, it's been completely removed. And it's not just the BLM Plaza. At the very same time, President Trump has ordered the restoration of monuments and statues taken down during the Biden administration all across the country. Trump has just signed an executive order that's aimed at restoring truth and sanity to the American history, as he says it, through an overhaul of the Smithsonian Institute and historical sites around the United States. The order will have the effect of putting back a number of historical monuments across the nation that were taken down during the Biden years under pressure and capitulation to BLM. Those days are now officially over. In fact, it does appear as if George Floyd murals are being literally demolished all over the country. I mean, take a look at that. BLM is dead. BLM, which turned out to be more or less a financial scam, but BLM is dead. The murals are being painted over and the historic monuments are being restored, and the national ramifications for this simply cannot possibly be overestimated. What Trump is doing here is simply formalizing into law what's already been happening for years now. I mean, the fact of the matter is, whether anyone likes it or not, an untold number of BLM murals and George Floyd monuments have all been vandalized and defaced all across the country. This was once widely reported on, but in point of fact, I mean, the case, as I understand, the cases of vandalism become so commonplace, so numerous, it's not even considered newsworthy anymore. But that said, the fact that President Trump has ordered the process of removing both BLM murals as well as restoring so many of the civic monuments that were taken down during the cowardly Biden years shows that Trump is taking culture, particularly American civic culture, very, very seriously in a way that no other Republican president has done. Victor Davis Hanson actually just wrote a really excellent article where he noted that while our previous Republican presidents paid lip service to defending traditional American culture, they didn't do anything about it. They did literally nothing to stop the left, the cultural Marxist left's capture of our cultural institutions over the last few decades. Even red state Republican governors largely turned a blind eye to the increasing wokeification of our culture within their respective states. They allowed the campuses of their state universities to get radicalized. They allowed the BLM murals to go up everywhere with very, very little pushback, lest they be accused of being racist. Whereas Trump don't care. Trump is actually doing something about this. He's actively fighting the culture wars, and he's fighting it even at the level of monuments. And that is absolutely huge, because both the erecting of monuments and painting murals, as well as their defacing and vandalizing and being taken down, prove that sculpture and art do in fact continue to have tremendous iconic significance in our culture today. The key to understanding the role of art and culture, particularly our statues, our monuments, our paintings, our sculpted images, is that they embody, they symbolize the eternity of the ideas that they substantiate, the ideas and values that they substantiate. So you see this explicitly in the use of enduring materials like marble or stone. They convey the notion that the values embodied by the image are long lasting. Indeed, in many respects, the ideas and values are considered eternal. So, for example, a grand European cathedral is a monument to the enduring truth of the Christian faith. The 1,000-year-old stone building is a testimony that this is a faith that lasts 1,000 years. So the key here is that what we instantiate in our monuments and our murals are cultural ideals that we believe are as permanent as the monument itself. This is why we go to DC, right? In terms of sightseeing, right? All the monuments that we go to see in DC are all monuments to timeless ideals that are as permanent as the monuments themselves. So then this begs the question, what does it mean when we start knocking down or defacing or erasing these monuments and murals? Well, it obviously means that those ideals are an affront to those who are defacing them. The defacers, the vandals, as it were, they want nothing to do with them. That's what happened to the Berlin Wall back in the late 80s. The knocking down of the Berlin Wall was symbolic that the world that wall represented had itself fallen. That's the key. The knocking down of the Berlin Wall was a symbol that the world that wall had represented for all those decades had itself fallen. The fall of the wall was symbolic of the fall of the ideals that put the wall up in the first place. So the irony of what's happening here is that the very iconoclasm, you know that word, right? The smashing and defacing and tearing down of statues, the very iconoclasm that gave birth to the BLM movement back in 2020, when BLM protesters were vandalizing our historic monuments and statues in every city in the nation. The irony here is that iconoclasm is now being effectively reversed. What Trump is doing here with BLM Plaza, that's even been renamed as I understand it, in raising that whole thing down or in covering it up, he is reversing the iconoclasm. Now BLM and their ideals are the victims of iconoclasm. Now their statues are being taken down and their murals are being defaced. And many of the statues and monuments that were torn down are being returned. They're being restored. It's that twofold movement, and it's always going to be twofold. If monuments are being struck down, new monuments will always be erected, because as one set of values are being torn down, a new set of values are going to replace them, and they're going to be monumentalized. I mean, I think this is an extraordinary symbol of the MAGA movement and America First. And ironically, this is just actually an American outworking, a specifically American outworking of a larger international politics that's rising up all over the world. You know, really what's happening here with the end of BLM and the return of our great civic monuments is what scholars call restoration politics. It's a pretty fitting term for what's happening here. And this is something that's happening all over the world, at least wherever we're seeing the rise of populist movements successfully coming to power, because liberal globalism operates by something called emancipatory politics. So it's just a fancy schmancy way of, of a politics that claims to liberate oppressed people groups. And it does it by dismantling a population's culture. So emancipatory politics basically recasts a nation's unique culture, customs, and traditions as, racist, bigoted, all kinds of phobic, all the woke categories. So because liberal globalism operates with this emancipatory politics, it replaces a nation's unique culture with woke liberal norms that supposedly liberate and emancipate all kinds of groups that have now been, considered like marginalized. And so that's what accounted for this sort of woke fad that infested so much of the West over the last 4 years. What's happening now is that globalist structure, that globalist foundation for emancipatory politics and its monuments is waning all over the world in a manner comparable to how communism's wane ended up presaging, as it were, the fall of the Berlin Wall. For a number of reasons, but primarily because of what scholars call post-security politics, where globalism inevitably erodes and destroys the very securities that we were promised as part of the nation state, right? Border security, economic security, cultural security. Because of the erosion of those securities all around the world, more and more populations are pushing back against that erosion by re-embracing their nationalism, their culture, their customs, their traditions as mechanisms of resistance against these anti-cultural processes of globalization. But the more globalization wanes, the more its politics, its unique emancipatory politics are replaced. And that replacement is what's called restoration politics. And that's the new political era that we're entering into. Restoration politics is all about re-implementing re-traditionalized policies in every sphere of life. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing here in restoring these monuments that were taken down during the Biden years, all the while at the same time erasing the BLM murals like the BLM Plaza in D.C. This is restoration politics. And it really does appear to be the politics of the future. We talked about this in our earlier video today, the first one actually I put up today, where I highlighted an article by political analyst Alex Castellanos, who he basically argued that the fundamental problem ultimately for the Democrats is not their messaging, obviously, or even their issues. It's the fact that the world that current Democrat policies were shaped by simply no longer exists. In his words, the Democrat Party is basically anachronistic. I love how he said it. He wrote that their obsolescence runs deeper than their ideas. How's that for a turn of phrase? Their obsolescence runs deeper than their ideas. In other words, the world that they represent, the world from which their ideas emerge, the old liberal industrial world, doesn't exist anymore. Any more than the world of the Berlin Wall still exists. The Democrats are imploding because the world that they represent has collapsed. Restoration politics are the politics of the future. And now, increasingly, we have the return of the monuments to prove it. You may or may not know that I left academia a few years back for broadcasting, but teaching the next generation has and always will be on my heart. I've been broadcasting now through 3 election cycles, and I'm just sick at what the elites have done to our education system. So I decided to step up. My team and I have been working on this for well over a year now. I started a school, and I have absolutely massive plans to take it nationwide. The Worldview Institute of Entrepreneurship and Apprenticeship opens its first location in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on April 9th, and I want to invite you to the ribbon cutting. And I've built a whole amazing event around it, so I want you to come and join me at the Kingdom Builders Experience, April 9th through 11th. You'll get an exclusive invite to the school's ribbon cutting. You'll be invited to a special Scotch and Cigars meetup with yours truly. I'll be lecturing at the school, plus we're hosting a Business Makers Summit where education meets opportunity. Now, seats are limited. Click the link below to learn more, and I can't wait to see you there. We are in absolutely unprecedented times. The return of Trump has effectively flipped politics on its head. While virtually all second-term presidents are plagued by the lame duck curse, depleting their political leverage, Trump has returned with unprecedented political leverage and his strongest support ever. There are signs that we're seeing an extraordinary political realignment where economic, racial, and age demographics are dynamically shifting away from a politics of the past to a new politics, a politics of nation, culture, custom, and tradition. So, for example, one of the most notable political shifts of late is among young men. Surveys show that they are more conservative than ever and exemplify support for number 47, unmatched by any other age demographic. And this political realignment isn't just a statistical blip. It's fueled by tangible shifts among many other groups like Black Americans, Hispanics, and Gen Z voters, demographics that have historically leaned left. Well, as the left struggles to regain relevance following Trump's crushing victory, discussions surrounding his polling have taken on a fevered pitch, with commentators dissecting whether this reflects a genuine realignment or a fleeting reaction to his early policy moves like immigration crackdowns and economic promises. Well, no one, and I mean no one, knows the sentiments of the American electorate like our guest today, the one, the only Rich Barris of the People's Pundit. Now, if you're a regular to this channel, he needs no introduction. He's been with us numerous times. I name and drop him every week. He's the single best pollster and election data analyst out there. And he's here today to give us some insight into how things are shaping up in the third month of this historic term. Rich, my man, welcome, my friend. Great to have you back.
It's great to be back. Thanks so much for having me, as always. And real quick, let me just say, you stepped it up with this school. I mean, this is something.
Oh, thanks,
this is
man.
really something. Laura and I were like, that's stepping it up. You know, that's another level. So many people just sit around and talk and do things, and maybe that's their contribution. But this is that's above and beyond. So we tip our hats to you.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, we already got 5 students. I mean, don't despise the days of small beginnings, and it's just wonderful. They're great. It's a gap year program, so they're 18, 19, and they're studying great classical philosophy, but also learning a trade at the same time. So it's bringing the servile arts together with the liberal arts, and I'm ecstatic. I can't wait. We're gonna do the ribbon cutting in a couple of weeks. So thanks, Rich. That's awesome. It's maybe we'll have you do an online lecture there or something like that.
I would be honored.
That would be
honored,
dude. We will be co-teachers. We will be co-profs.
God bless those children. No, but you're providing. You're providing.
God help them, or God bless. That's right.
We're missing that in our society, especially that age group. We're missing that badly, and it's something that, as a nation, we needed to do better with. And it's so it's just fantastic to hear. I mean, it really couldn't have been better guy to do it.
Well, thank you, Rich, and I'm gonna give the accolades right back at you. I can't remember. I'm getting too old. If I had you on, since you were formally honored with the distinction of being the single most accurate pollster of 2024, but if I'm being redundant, so what? Huge and well-deserved congratulations to you, my friend. You deserve that more than anyone.
I don't think I've been on since then, but if I have, again, thank you. You know, I mean, there are some of us who really anguish over getting this stuff right. And, you know, I thanks to everybody who helps, because that's really, you know, what it comes down to. If nobody was listening, then it really wouldn't matter. Right. So thank goodness for that.
Well,
God be praised.
Yeah, amen. And I think you particularly deserve it, just in your industry, because you, I mean, I know your industry drives you crazy in that, as you've said over and over again, the polling, what do you call it? Is it like the polling mafia or whatever? They don't reward you
The
for
election
being
mafia.
Yeah, the election mafia. If anything, they don't want you to be accurate if it goes against the narrative.
Yeah, and with the fall of 538, first it was Nate Silver, and now he's doing his own thing.
And by the way, for that,
the silver bulletin.
We are in the golden age.
And then G. Elliott Morris, who is, for people who didn't know, a left-wing fanatic, a straight-up commie, not, unabashedly, unashamed. And for him to take the wheel over there was incredible, even though supposedly they weren't using Nate Silver's formula. Maybe that's true when it comes to their election forecasting, But when it comes to how they gauged pollsters and whether or not they gave them an A or an F or a ban on their pollster scorecard, for people who don't know this, you are actually punished for being more accurate if you are not in the consensus. So if the entire community is too far to the left by 7 points on average, but the People's Pundit is spot on, the People's Pundit will get a bad grade and he'll get an R lean of R+7 because I'm that far outside the consensus. So what they are doing is literally punishing you for being more accurate than a liberal narrative. And that is so many levels of wrong. But now they're out. They're done because it's not, they've been bleeding money since the days of Nate Silver. He bled $8 million on an annual basis, running 538 for years. Nobody cared. Why did they care? They care now, not because of the money. They care because it's not working anymore, because there are too many guys like me out there, and they're adjusting, which is something we can talk about, but they're adjusting to that, and they're trying to figure out new ways to combat, the new ways to wage information warfare on good people.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah. Narrative, not news. Ideology, not information. And right. I have to share with you, I mean, I was just traveling. I was in Austin over the weekend. I do meet audience members, which is always so cool. I got to say, man, of all of our regular guests, I mean, you're the name they give the shout out the most to. They love you. Cool, they love the information you have. They love your commitment to accuracy. People were I guess, what did we say back in 2024? The left had TDS, but we had PTSD, from 2020, right? Yes. So they just didn't know who to trust leading up to November. And dude, you totally earned that trust again, week in and week out, with your analysis. And so anyway, it's an honor, man, just to have you every time. All right, we got it. Let's start. I do want to get your take on the elections that are going on today, but I wanted to see if we could couch it in the numbers that are surrounding number 47, because I think what you pointed out is he really seems to be the first Republican president whose levels of support totally rival that of his party. Talk about driving you crazy, right? So, give us an overview. Where is Trump now? He seems to have maintained. I was listening to your live stream yesterday. He seems to have maintained his strength with his base. You're talking about, I think, the polls evening out a bit among independents. Where do you see Trump right now in terms of approval?
So he bobs up and down between, +2 to +4 at this point. I mean, he was at a high of +18 during the honeymoon phase, which is just insane. And previously to me, unthinkable. But there were surprisingly large percentages of Democrats when he took office who did have what was a backlash to being lied to all the time. I think a big part of this started with Joe Biden, like the almost epiphany-like experience of watching that debate and going, Republicans were not lying. He's senile, right? And it was this cascading effect from there. And the media, of course, they just completely discredited themselves during this election season. So that's been holding for a while into his presidency, which surprised me quite a bit. For any Republican president, any president to maintain approval ratings like this is very difficult. And this is a very partisan country, a very split country, or has been of late. But he hasn't gotten anywhere near where some of these other pollsters have him. Trump +2. I mean, approved +2 is really as low as he has been. And I went back and just checked recently for the show. He has not dipped below approved +2. And the last poll that we literally just did, I shared with the audience the other day. It was a private poll, but I was allowed to share some of it. He was approved +3. So, I mean, and it looked like he was ticking back up a little bit, which is, again, surprising. It's just presidents don't hang on this long, guys. They go underwater pretty quickly. Joe Biden did. Barack Obama did. He fell from an awesome high. It was a spectacular collapse. And Joe Biden, there was no beef there. There was no meat. Where's the beef, right? Where's the meat? What is that expression? That's what happened to him very quickly. So
Right.
any of these underwater numbers you're seeing, guys, I mean, I just go and see how they performed the last election cycle, because
That's
it's that simple.
Yeah, guys, click on the link below to follow his X feed. I love you. I mean, dude, you've got this X personality at the tip of your fingers. I don't want it. You always have a turn of phrase where you just so brutalize these fake pollsters out
They
there. I mean,
deserve it.
it's so great, and they
They
deserve it.
deserve it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great, and you and Mark Mitchell, you guys are just. You really are corroborating each other there. What you were talking about, an interesting interrelationship between Trump's favorability and his approval yesterday, if I recall, in that you said something like what drives Democrats crazy is there are plenty of people who don't necessarily like Trump, but they vote for him anyway, kind of thing. Could you flesh that out a little bit?
That's always been his secret weapon, is, this group of people who, they say to themselves, man, I can't stand this guy's attitude, or I don't like how he says this or that. But when you ask them, was he a good president? Is he a good president? Is he effective? Can he get things done? What do you think? How does he handle foreign policy? As a leader, the man is a leader. They give it up for him because of it. Because he does the job well. So it's always been difficult for Democrats to deal with, because look, they're 1 for 3 trying to beat him. And with that one, I think we all agree here.
Right.
That
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
Like what we had to go through as a country for them to squeak that by.
40,000 votes.
Give me a break. Right. And I don't know that they still know how to answer that, because what's happening now, which is new, and I can't wait to get into the next public polling project to see if this holds. We have never seen Trump with a slightly higher margin with favorability than he has with approval. So if this happens, this is even more devastating, in my opinion, to the Democrats trying to push back on him, because it says there are still a significant number of people who actually do like him, but are kind of holding back and saying, before I give my approval to how he's doing right now, let's see how he does in the economy. Let's see what happens with this. And they're kind of waiting back, and they're giving us the somewhat answer, which is like somewhat approved or somewhat disapproved or just uncertain. And that uncertain number is higher than we have ever seen it. Everyone always has an opinion of Donald Trump, folks. So when you ask about his approval rating, you're not going to see many times where it's above a point, 2 points. Nobody's unsure about Donald Trump. And what we found in this last survey was exactly that the unsure number went up a little bit, and he was still positive, but he was, there was these group of people who say that they liked him, but they weren't sure yet on approval. That's upside down, folks. That is an upside down, topsy-turvy situation. That is not the way it's been. In the past, it's been, they'll say they don't like him, but he does a good job. So, yeah, even worse, potentially even worse for Democrats.
What I'm finding so fascinating are the signs of this, a very real, I was talking about it earlier, a very real political realignment, just a bottom line, a different politics than we've seen in the 20th century, as it were. And I'm thinking particularly among young voters, Gen Z, under 35, young men in particular, and other non-traditional Republican groups, non-white working class. You nailed that like 2 years ago. You were seeing those trends, at least. What are some of those drivers? Why do we see traditionally Democrat voters? And again, what I mean is it's not just one of those. We're seeing it's black men, it's non-white, it's Latinos in general, and particularly Latino men. It's young voters. Why are we seeing so many of these traditionally Democrat constituents defecting over to Trump?
There's policy. I think there are policy reasons or policy answers to that question. And then I think there's something else that's going on, especially with the younger, the 18 to 24-year-old male, which is a solidly Democratic constituency once upon a time. And it's just not now. Donald Trump culturally made Republicans or made the Republican Party or his brand of it. He made them cool again, at least for the time being. And they missed, by they Democrats, they missed this group of their kids to me. I'm getting old. I got gray hairs. They missed this group of young adults, young Americans, because they don't care anymore about the Grammys and the Oscars, right? Like, what did you and I have when we were that age? What do we look at, right? Though that all is gone. That culture's gone. The influence is gone. They're watching influencers. They're watching YouTubers. They're watching TikTok. They're watching their Instagrams, and they're watching their X feeds. And somehow Democrats just lost their grip on this age group. And the information that gets passed to them is totally different. And the era of Joe Biden hurt them. Frankly, it hurt them very badly. We were a laughing stock to all of these younger generations. I mean, America as a whole. We got a guy who's clearly senile, and the legacy media is telling us he's not, falling up the stairs, not down the stairs, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, Dr. Turley. 4 times. And this is like, then he finally again goes on this stage and can't speak for a presidential debate. It made a fool out of the country, and they didn't like it. And then I think the other part is policy. They either remember when their parents were doing better under Donald Trump. They don't have access to these opportunities. I said earlier today, all of these people are pining on about tariffs are going to raise the cost of automobiles. This group can't afford an automobile. What are you talking about? They're not going to notice a difference in price because it's not even an option for them, many of them right now. So
it's literally like saying, but the price of penthouses are going to go up. Like, so what? I don't care.
I feel bad for the guy who can afford a penthouse, but not me, right.
It's so
how are eggs? How much are eggs again? Right? Yeah. How much is gas with my jalopy I have to fill? You know, I mean, that's it. It's so only disconnected or bubbled people would even entertain that among that age group anyway. And then I really do think it's peripheral, but I really do think that the alliance with Elon Musk made a big deal. When we're polling not only Trump's favorabilities, but Elon as well, he's most unpopular with boomers. You know, they think 2 things. Elon has my social security data and he's going to take my social security check away. It's so weird. I mean, they believe everything they hear on Fox News, frankly. They do. The younger generation, they don't, if you were to talk to them, especially those younger 18 to 24s, they're not listening about that. That narrative is not piercing. What is do you see how cool it was? They got to go to Elon to rescue astronauts. Like it's a totally different priority for them. And they think, you know, they want to be Elon, and that's a good thing. They want the opportunity to be Elon. That's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, it's so funny because it does turn the cultural backlash thesis on its head, doesn't it? Because that's right, you know, because we were told, I think it was the cultural backlash was 2 British scholars back in 2018 or something. They were telling us, oh, you know, these populist parties in Europe and Trump and America, that's all just these old white men that can't stand the multicultural progressive, you know, world that's coming. And so this is their last hurrah, but they'll die off. And don't worry, the progressive Gen Z generation will finally take over. And it's the exact opposite. All the people who are still supporting the mainstream, you know, Democrat, the kind of liberal agenda are all like post 60. I mean, it's crazy.
And you cited him before, actually. Alex Castellanos' piece on this is actually brilliant because in their minds, they're still living in that world that Alex is saying simply doesn't exist anymore. But in their minds, it does. That's where it's that's the only pushback I'd give to Alex's central thesis there. He's right about the reality of it. It's gone. But it does still exist, like Benedict Anderson's imagined community in their mind. It's in them, but they're not going to be around forever. I mean, that's just the ultimate truth of it. You know, when we think about even my generation, the millennials and down, you know, some of us remember our parents might not have been, you know, the Ozzie and Harriet, right? The divorce rates spiked under this because the most dedicated liberal voter is now an older, educated liberal voter from the 60s and 70s, right? That's the most dedicated, highest propensity turnout Democrat. And they were not very good stewards of the American dream. And they have kids who are facing the consequences of that.
Right.
And then there are kids who, like my son, will be able to vote in a few years. All right. So even, I mean, it's almost compounding that the impact of that on the psyche, on the American psyche, is starting to actually compound with these generations. And it's going to be tougher and tougher for, it's like short gain in the short term, they'll have a gain. In the long term, they could have just a complete wipeout, and they don't see it. They just don't see it. And it's, I not that I care, not that I feel sorry for them, but I mean, it is interesting how they cannot take a step back and look at the situation, why they lost this election. They haven't made any efforts to go back out and get these core groups, have they? Nothing.
None at all. No, Zippo. If anything, they continue to insult them. That's what right. I mean, I was stunned by that Sonny Hostin sort of thing. Why do you think that all these border counties and border districts in Texas that were always reliably blue suddenly went deep red into misogyny, sexism, racism? It's
what? Those Hispanics are always misogynistic to begin with. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first rule of when you find yourself in a hole, right?
Stop digging.
Oh my God.
Their only hope is if Republicans save them from themselves. That is really the way I see it. And I mean, I don't bridge to that, but that's it.
Yeah. That's a perfect pivot, because obviously Trump's appeal far outpaces the broader Republican Party. I know that this drives you crazy almost as much as the election mafia. I mean, we just saw it in kind of my backyard in Pennsylvania 36, a district that Trump won plus 15, Northern Lancaster, and the freaking Democrat wins by a few hundred votes because of the incompetence of the Pennsylvania Republican Party. I mean, it does appear to be an absurd discrepancy. That's an explicitly absurd discrepancy from what just happened a few months ago.
Yes.
Are there any signs that the GOP could tap into this Trump-specific momentum? It seems like Florida's doing it. I mean, the turnout today looks like it's just a blowout in CD1 and CD6. Yeah, but is there any hope for the GOP?
I think and you really just started to scratch at the surface of that. It really depends on where and who, and I hate to phrase it like this, but there is a battle. You have your Florida Republicans and you have your North Carolina Republicans. There's some elements of those that are much more MAGA than others. And then you have the people in Pennsylvania who have been a wreck for years. They've been losers for years. Trump comes along and wins their state again, drags their guy over the finish line for Senate because he's not MAGA. Let's get real. I mean, he's a nice guy, by all accounts, a nice guy, but he's certainly not MAGA. If Trump
he's more Romney than MAGA. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
And look, he's a hedge fund guy. If Trump was not on the ballot, Dave McCormick would have lost. Is there anyone who's going to seriously argue that point with me? The guy lost votes in Erie and in Northampton, the only two battleground counties anymore. Well, they were until Trump just flipped a bunch more in 24, but which he lost. So it goes to my point. And instead of bringing the more MAGA guy who did more groundwork into the forefront and bringing somebody who could lead the Pennsylvania GOP, I'm not saying it's not a reward, but it's a recognition that, look, these guys understand the coalition, the winning coalition, and the direction of where the party needs to go. They understand it better. So maybe they should be the ones to lead. That's not what happened. Unfortunately, the Rhino element threatened that guy, threatened his family, threatened his business, and to the point where he backed out of the race for the Pennsylvania GOP chairman. So this is what is still going on in the Republican Party, and it's outrageous. Very, very few wins on that side of the fight. I mean, really, on that front. Florida is a decade of work or more to get it to where it is. It's the gold standard for election administration and party governance. It's the gold standard. And the Republican Party would be much better served if they mirrored that, if they understood that and took note of it. And sadly, there's just an element from the consulting class to the rhino class. California, by the way, just happened again.
Yep.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Who does she run out and go get? Ron Nering. And their answer is always the same. These guys can raise money. Okay, but where is the money coming from? Where the money come from matters, Dr. Turley. You know that. So if Ron has to go and tap all of the old Chamber of Commerce donors and all the old rhinos, who do you think they're going to give their money to run for Republican primaries? So I mean, Trump needed to get some people through the Senate, and I get that. But I'm telling you, this time you better wake up and think about what is going to happen in his party when he's gone, more than his own agenda at the time. And of course, his agenda matters. I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying you can't always endorse Lindsey Graham because you need him to give a vote or get somebody through the Senate for your cabinet. You can't keep doing that forever. You just can't. Otherwise, it won't last. It won't.
Where's Mike Whatley in all this? The RNC chairman.
I got a call before the election and said, we're railroading Rona. Who can replace Rona? And the one and only name that I gave them was Michael Whatley.
North Carolina.
Listen, and it's not simply because this guy's MAGA burning through and through. It's because he's open-minded enough and he's smart enough to know things are changing. This is how we need to adjust. And he understood why the Republican Party was changing. He understood, look, I see it in Western North Carolina. I see it in these neighborhoods. I see it even in parts of Eastern North Carolina where you have majority registered Democrat counties voting for Trump at 60+% because those are old Democrat, working class Democrats who don't vote for the Democratic Party anymore. And he also understood the infrastructure situation, that Democrats are beating Republicans because Democrats they have election month and Republicans have election day. And I'll tell you, there's what happened to the gubernatorial election is unfortunate, but there is an element in North Carolina that fights, and Michael Whatley's part of that. He is.
Great. Good. Yeah, I'm really hoping he can help shape some of these state Republican apparatuses more in line with North Carolina. I mean, he's helped to flip North Carolina into supermajority, a Republican supermajority at the legislature, and we're seeing what DeSantis is doing in Florida. Abbott, I know people get. I was just in Texas. Abbott drives them crazy. One day he's the greatest guy in the world. The next minute they're like, "What are you doing?"
It's bipolar.
Bipolar. That's a good way. Yeah,
very bipolar. The relationship
as our Texas Republicans in general. I don't. They're trying to destroy Ken Paxton, all this kind of stuff. It's so insane. So hopefully he can rein in some of those factors. Speaking of the states now, all right, you got to give me your sense of what's going on. It looks like Florida districts 1 and 6 are going to be GOP blowouts. And thank God, and God bless Florida with the data. They have the most awesome up to the minute election data. You must just be like a pig in mud with that kind of stuff. Wisconsin, on the other hand, the data is tough. What are you seeing? What do you think's going on with Schimmel in Wisconsin?
So, in Wisconsin, I think that people have to be careful because unlike Florida, we don't have voter registration by party. So even though we're looking at by county and we can see, look, red counties are voting at higher rates than expected, we do have to be a little bit careful because it could mean that Democrats in those counties are just voting disproportionate. But that said, Wisconsin's a bit of a trend breaker. They're not even a trend setter. They're just a trend breaker. But it would be weird, given what we're hearing from clerks around Wisconsin, how high the turnout is in some of these areas. Yeah. It would be weird to consider the idea that these aren't Republicans voting in very high numbers. So it just would be odd. I will tell you this. The pollsters were wrong in the Florida modeling. That's very clear. We know that already. And it looks like if the clerks are correct, it looks like they're going to be wrong in Wisconsin as well. It may be that Republicans pulled their heads out of their butts at the last minute here. We'll see. I would still give the Democrat an edge because it's the history of it. They take advantage of that last minute Milwaukee vote. at
Yeah.
a rate that, and for people who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a provision in the law where you can register someone and get them to cast a ballot last minute, right up until, and Republicans don't take advantage of that. In the last, I believe it was 4 election cycles, Milwaukee accounted for more than 80 or more % of the ballots that were cast using that provision, which makes no sense because Milwaukee is not 80% of the statewide vote, but it goes to show you that Democrats do that, and that has helped them eke it out in close elections. It almost helped Mandela Barnes beat Ron Johnson, but it didn't. And they tried to do it for Kamala Harris in 24, but it's just too many votes. 35,000 is a lot of votes to find. So I'd give it still the edge to the Democrat. I just would not give them 85% the way that I was thinking going into today, and until I saw these turnout numbers and talked to some of these people. This is a very large turnout. This is shocking. And that high turnout now is bad for Democrats. It used to be good, but it's bad for Democrats now. It says the normies are voting at higher rates, and normal people are Republican. Okay.
Right. And like you said, and our party now is the party, unfortunately, of the low propensity to almost no propensity voters. So the more voters that turn out, the more those who tend to vote more akin to MAGA, as it were. Yeah. I learned that from you. So yes,
which was upside down from our entire lives. And my entire career as a pollster. So when I first started to see it and tell people that, it was met with scoffing and, and certainly skepticism, but honestly, as it should be, because it's not the norm. I would just say this though, folks, Roosevelt did not accept, and Truman did not accept, that their voters were working class, everyday voters, normal voters, family voters, right? They did not accept that. They would just be low propensity and that would be it. It doesn't have to be like this. It has just been like this in modern American politics, as in our lifetimes in the recent history. But it has not always been the case, and it does not need to be the case. You just have to make them believe, and you have to engage them with the right people. You're telling your area. You're telling me Scott Pressler couldn't find 400 votes if they picked up the phone and called Scott Pressler? Of course he would have. They didn't
in an hour. He could do it in an hour. Exactly.
So easy. They did that because they wanted the money. They didn't want to give anything to Scott to help him get some votes. They didn't want to do it. And if that keeps up, that's going to be a problem. But it doesn't have to be the case.
Love you, Rich. Where do you want people to go to subscribe? You've got an amazing X handle. You've got a great YouTube channel. You're on Rumble. Where do you want people to go?
Always everywhere, but the best place is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Check out the Public Polling Project while you're there.
Absolutely. As you guys know, Rich is the best. I mean, it's not even opinion at this point. It is now, it is a law of the universe.
God willing, it'll stay the law.
God willing, it will. Oh, I know it will. You just mastered this art and science of polling, and you're amazing. As is your lovely bride, Laura. Thank you for all that you guys do. And I know, but yeah, polling is it is a thankless business, isn't it? I mean, when you're right, you're king, and when you're wrong, you're Satan. And and then when things aren't happening, there's no election. It's like, who cares, and so forth. I mean, dude, but I think you've kind of redefined it where you're sort of you maintain a read on the pulse of things, the cultural pulse of things. You even bring up the social imaginary and so forth. That's I just think it's taking polling to a whole new level, and data analysts and analytics to a whole new level. And I love it. And so I'm like addicted. I just love your stuff. And so guys, just make sure, click on those links below, go to the Locals page. You're going to love it. And what Rich is doing. And yeah, you bet. You're awesome. Let's have you back soon. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. Fascinating stuff. So.
Anytime. Thanks for having me as always.
You're the best, Rich. Thank you. Let's be honest, we're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with your every health goal, whether it's boosting your energy or trimming belly fat or supporting healthy blood sugar or pumping your testosterone up or even reducing swelling in your legs. Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the good old USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. All you have to do is go to purehealthresearch.com and then use coupon code TURLEY at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there is zero risk in trying something new. So why wait? Head on over to purehealthresearch.com right now, explore their 45 amazing supplements, and save 35% off before this deal ends with coupon code TURLEY. Don't miss this chance to feel your best. All right, gang, we got a special feature on our channel now. You can call in to a special hotline number and record your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them on our Tuesday and Thursday night broadcast. We'll even play, I believe, Michael, we're even going to play the actual message that you leave. So there's the number there. It's 717-844-5984. That is Dr. Steve's hotline. And you can have your question featured on our show. It's 717-844-5984. And I believe we have some questions queued up, do we not?
Hi, Dr. Steve. My name is Roger Carmen. I live in Sherman, Texas. And thank you for this great opportunity. I watch your videos all the time. The opportunity is have this talk line with you. It's so great. But with all that's going on with the Tesla dealerships, the Tesla cars getting keyed, threats on Trump and Elon Musk, doesn't this remind you of the Nazis in Germany in the 1920s and 30s regarding the brown shirts, where they would go around and terrorize, they would disrupt, they would just heckle, and they'd try to destroy people by intimidation. This is so much like them. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's a brilliant observation. And it's very apropos, the comparison. I bring up the Polish psychologist often, Andrzej Lobachevsky, who studied leftists in Europe for over 40 years, particularly Marxist leftists, but he came to the same conclusion with those who were associated with the Nazi Party. And that was, in the end, at least when it came to the core of their power centers, they were dominated by psychopaths. Okay, this is a psychologist. He doesn't throw around psychopathy loosely. These are malevolently manipulative people, and he found that malevolently manipulative people are predisposed disproportionately to movements that enable them to scale that malevolent manipulation. And in Germany in the 1930s, it was the Nazi regime, and then post World War II in Eastern Europe, it was the Soviet regime, the communist regimes, and they attracted inordinately psychopaths. And when psychopaths are ruling your population, as it were, the population becomes hysterical. And I think that's what we're seeing today. These are unhinged hysterics that believe violence is not just justifiable. Violence is morally obligatory. Silence is compliance. So you have to act out against this evil and this injustice and so forth. So, and what you're also pointing out is something really interesting, because at the heart of this malevolent manipulation is projection. Psychopaths love to use projection as a way of whipping everyone up into hysterics. And what projection does is it allows you to admit a crime without admitting to the crime. You can along with everyone point out the dead body in the middle of the room, lying in the middle of the room, but you could try to pin that murder onto someone else, even though you're the one who did it, right? So you try to frame that, but projection is basically framing. It is accusing others of the very sins you're committing. But the advantage of it is it enables you to admit a crime without admitting to the crime. Everyone sees something is wrong here, but what you do is you try to frame others for the nefarious malevolence that you're engaging in. So by calling Elon a Nazi and by scratching swastika symbols on these cars, ironically, these psychopaths are practicing this very projection that psychopathy is so known for. And so I think your observation is right on. I think it's the same spirit. I would see it as a spiritual battle. I would see this as in need of literal exorcism. And so we need prayer and we need vigilance in the midst of this insanity. And thank God we have President Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, Dan Bongino in power to push back against this. Great observation. Great question.
Steve, David Cook from Asheville, North Carolina. Just wondering, did President Trump use the auto pen on anyone's pardons? Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, David. I don't know if he used an auto pen on pardons. I've read some commentary that pardons need to be signed directly by a president, and I've seen some pushback on that. Obviously, if Trump's nullifying these Biden partisans, that's obviously going to get appealed, and through the appellate process going to the Supreme Court, all that will get worked out. I don't know the answer in terms of pardons. I do know he has used the auto pen in, and if I recall, he did say in his pardons he always physically signed them. Now that I recall, but he did say he used auto pen in other signatories. And the important thing with the auto pen is it's not the auto pen per se. I think it started with Truman. I can't remember who started the auto pen. It's just a very practical way of getting the president to sign all of these orders and so on. The key with the auto pen is consent. That's the key. Consent of its use. So Trump in his first term used an auto pen to sign some items. But what is absolutely forbidden is the use of the auto pen without the president's consent, regardless of what's being signed. And that's where Speaker Mike Johnson's testimony, his anecdote kind of comes into all of this. Johnson relayed a conversation that he had last year with President Biden. And he was pushing Biden one of the executive orders that he signed. I think it was banning LNG, liquefied natural gas, which was hurting the refineries in Louisiana and jobs and so on. And Biden, apparently, this is according to Johnson, Biden had no idea what he was talking about. Biden actually vociferously denied ever signing anything like that or consenting to it. And Johnson confronted him on it in the sense of like, dude, this was just like a month ago. And he said, and now we're getting this new book that just came out saying this was a frequent occurrence, Biden not recognizing people and the like. So, the whole question of Biden's mental acuity is now calling into question his ability to cognitively consent to any of these auto pen signatures, let alone the J6 committee pardons and the like. So to me, that's the key. It's not the question of the auto pen per se on pardons. It's a question of whether Biden gave his consent and or if he was even in a valid cognitive state to give such consent. To me, that's really what's behind all of this.
Hey, Dr. Steve. My name is Dr. Ron Polland, and my question concerns something that Newt Gingrich mentioned to Mark Levin on his show on Sunday night a week ago. Gingrich said that the court of a rogue judge could be abolished as a way to stop what they are currently doing to Trump. And I'd like to know more about that and how that's done, how that's possible. It seems like it's a lot easier to do than trying to get the judge impeached. So if you can find out more information about that, I would love to hear it. Thanks, Dr. Steve, and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm trying to think now. I had a great article on this very topic. Let me see. I've got my computer here. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Because yes, as I understand it, there we go. I'm looking for my file. And I know I've got it around somewhere. As I understand it, historical practice and precedent suggests that Congress does have the power to abolish lower federal courts. I think Gingrich is absolutely right on that. The founding fathers, we often think of the balance of powers of them having equal powers. That's, as I understand it, that is not true. The executive branch is that is the focal point of power in DC. Then you have the legislative branch that can hold the executive branch accountable. It can either, of course, it can impeach the president. No judge can remove a president, but legislature can. It could also enshrine the president's executive orders, which again gives him tremendous amount of power, into permanent law, or it can refuse to do so and then get those executive orders overturned with the next president. But as I understand it, the notion of the judge having power akin to the president to be able to tell the president what he can or cannot do, that's foreign to the founding fathers. It's not three equal branches of power. It's three branches that balance each other out. But that doesn't mean they have equal power. So there is an awesome article that fleshes that out. Let me see if I can find this. I may have found it. Look at that. Then I am more organized than I thought. Yeah. I think I found it for you. Let's see. I think I found it. I think. Look at that. I found it, my friend. I found it. Okay. It's a long. So if you're on X, go to Richard Porter IL. Let me see. Let me get there myself. What am I doing? He just had this excellent article here. There we go. I mean, it's a long. I can actually. Well, I don't want to do that for. Yes. So go to the handle Richard Porter. So Richard Porter, PORTRIL, like Illinois, all one word, at Richard Porter IL. And this is from March 30th. And it's a thread he has on Trump making the U.S. Constitution great again. And he talks about how you have this balance of power, but without every branch being absolutely equal. And he explains that. I don't know how much he gets into what Gingrich is talking about Congress's ability to abolish lower federal courts. But if I recall, Gingrich makes that argument to show they're not equal. Legislatures are more powerful than judges because legislatures can ban federal courts, whereas courts can't ban legislators, legislators, I should say. So yes, I think that would be the way to go. Now, having said that, I think Mike Johnson has made it very clear he's going to wait for the Supreme Court to rule, to at least publish its ruling this June or July. It sounds to me like they think they're going to overturn all of this in one big swoop. And Trump is already taking the posture of more or less ignoring these rulings. until the federal government, until the Supreme Court gives its ruling this summer. I know it's a coward's way out, but I guess Johnson just sees that as the most politically expedient thing to do. So these will be overturned. It's almost like guaranteed. It's basically found within the immunity ruling that they gave earlier on last year that shows that the executive branch has a sort of untouchableness to it that nobody else, including no other judge, this had to do with courts, no other judge, no prosecutor can mess with. There is as long as the president is doing that which is within his executive authority to do as president, like deport people and so on, close borders and all of that sort of stuff, as close down executive programs and federal departments and so on. As long as he's doing within his power, a court has no power over him. That's in effect what immunity is saying. You can't sue him. You can't do anything because he has this immunity within his executive power. So it should be pretty straightforward this summer. It's just we have to wait. And there's basically I've heard there's about 300 rogue left-wing judges that are getting cherry-picked to make these rulings and try to hamstring the president. But they're not doing it. They're just not. He's not taking them seriously. But Gingrich is right. They could, if the federal government does, I keep saying federal, if the Supreme Court does rule in such a way that's not advantageous to the executive branch and Trump, then I think that plan B is to start abolishing a lot of these lower federal courts over the next several months.
Mr. Steve, my name is Heather. I live here in Phoenix, Arizona. I am a absolutist when it comes to supporting Donald Trump and America First agenda. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Arizona finally getting their act together on the elections here. It just is so discouraging to see Arizona have quote unquote questionable elections here without any sense of transparency and accountability. And I want to get your thoughts on that. I would really love to hear. I really value your opinion and your analysis, and we look forward to a response. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Oh man, I feel for you because in my backyard in Pennsylvania, the Republican Party is just such a joke. I mean, so I was just talking to Rich Barris about this. So basically, when you're dealing with the Republican Party, you've got the federal Republican Party that is represented right now by President Trump and the whole Maha team, his cabinet and so forth. That's sort of the defining center of the Republican Party. But then you have the Republican Party at the state level. And that's where you just get different shades and different leaderships and so forth. So you got Florida that's absolutely crushing it right now. We're going to see. We'll have to see what the results are coming out of Congressional District 1 and Congressional District 6. People were really worried about fine. It looks like they're going to both win. The Republicans are going to both win by double digits. It looks like the turnout, we'll see, but it looks like the turnout in Wisconsin was absolutely crushing it. Pretty amazing. Again, we'll have to see what ends up happening with that. The results should be coming in at around any time. But where it just depends what state you go to. Texas is you'll pull your hair out with Texas Republicans because there's constant infighting. Ken Paxton, Texas Republicans tried to impeach their Republican attorney general. I mean, it's insane. So, Pennsylvania Republicans are a disaster. California Republicans are even worse. So what's happening in Arizona is right now, your voter registration for the GOP is an absolute fire. You may hit a double digit by the next election, by the next presidential election, 2028. You may have a 10-point advantage. No Democrat will ever win, at least at the statewide level. in a national election, no Democrat will win Arizona for the foreseeable future. That's the good news. In state elections, politics, that's going to be a different story, because now you still have a very powerful, very strong McCainite wing that pulls the levers of power there. It's the donors. They're connected with a class and a set of donors that have funded Arizona politics forever, and are still married to an old politics, the politics of the establishment, the liberal establishment, of which McCain was a major, as was Jeff Flake, as you remember, was a major member of. So it's going to take some time in the changing of the guard at the level of both leadership and donor. It's going to take some time, and it is frustrating. And I feel it too, because my backyard in Pennsylvania's turning red. We're only about, I think, 70,000 voter registrations from officially becoming a red state. Just so you know, I think it was just 10 years ago that Democrats had 1 million voter registration advantage over us. Now it looks like by this summer, we're going to have the GOP take over. So that's the rank and file. That's you. That's the voter. You're crushing it in Arizona right now at the level of the rank and file, at the level of grassroots voter registration. But it's the leadership and it's the donor class that's still the old guard. And the old guard doesn't want transparency, because the old guard likes to be able to play politics with your vote. They like to be able to move over to what's her name, your Katie Hobbs, and stab Kerry Lake in the back. They want to be able to do that, just like they did with Mastriano in Pennsylvania just 2 years ago. The Republican leadership, not one came out and endorsed Mastriano. Not one. They endorsed Josh Shapiro. So that kind of cloaking structure that they have, that lack of transparency, enables them to hide their basic betrayal of you. And that's what, in the end, why we despise the establishment so much, because they're a uniparty. They look out for each other rather than look out for you. So all of that is to say, it is frustrating, but keep up the amazing work, which you guys are doing, your grassroots campaigns are doing in terms of voter registration. You keep doing that. There's nothing they can do. You'll be too big to rig for the foreseeable future. You're just going to have to deal with some nonsense at the level of your state internal politics. That's going to take a while to kind of get exorcised out with a new leadership, a truly MAGA leadership and MAGA donors. It'll come. It's just going to take time. I get it. In my backyard, we're facing the same thing. You're ahead of us. You should be glad you're ahead of us there. We just blew in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania 36, District 36, a state Senate seat in a district that Trump won by 15 points. Just how many months ago? 4 months ago? 5 months ago? He won by 15 points. It's a Republican plus 20 district, and the Democrat won by 300 votes. The Democrat won by 300 votes. Again, Rich Barrett said, you don't think Scott Presler could find 300 votes in an hour? But they didn't even call him. They didn't even ask Scott to be there. They didn't ask Cliff Maloney of Pennsylvania Chase, who knocked on 500,000 doors to get out the vote. They didn't call him. Why? Because it's a corrupt leadership and, frankly, a corrupt donor class that want to keep the money amongst themselves. It all comes down to the money. So I know it's very frustrating, but the good news is everything at least a macro level is moving our way, and especially your way in Arizona. And I think that is it. I've got the, yes, we teed up those 4 questions. All right, gang. So let's rock and roll. Let's hope everything goes well. I think everything's going to be incredible in Florida, and we're going to keep an eye on what goes on in Wisconsin as the tally of the vote comes in. And may God bless those elections, and may God bless America. Love you guys.